Hello everyone, GoldenNova here, and we're back with another installment in my inadvertent series covering the day-to-day life of monsters throughout the Yugiverse. We've seen the rise and fall of the Goblin of Greed, the terrible luck of the Goblin Kid, and even the rapscallion reptile Gigo. And today, at the behest of this month's Quasar Commander, it's time to document a slightly tougher customer. They've served as the master of demonic hordes and have walked the path of humiliation in equal measure. From pack chaff to cards that have changed the game, this monster has quite the history. So get ready to be ignorant no more with Dark Ruler Hades explained. Dark Ruler Hades is a level 6 Dark Fiend monster with 2450 attack and 1600 defense, and can't be special summoned from the grave. And while on the field, the effects of monsters destroyed by battle with Fiend monsters you control are negated. Bigger than Monarchs, but not quite as nasty as Summoned Skull, this Lord of Evil makes for a stupendous general to head off any swarm of floaters you might come across. It might seem quaint by today's standards, but monsters that replace themselves when destroyed by battle were at a premium. Giant Rat, Shining Angel, Mystic Tomato, and even Pyramid Turtle could cheat out some pretty impactful cards while filling your grave with monsters for other effects. And let's not forget the absolutely heinous flip effect monsters from back in the day. But with Hades on point, you can shut them all down. And because it spreads to all of your Fiend monsters, you don't even have to pick and choose. They can all deafen the death rattle of your opponent's monsters. And it even has some very funny applications. The negate does not have an endpoint, so if the card has an effect that can be activated later, like a Phantom Knights monster, it'll get negated when they try to use that effect later. And it also turns Geminis into effect monsters. Yeah, it even shuts off continuous effects monsters might have in the graveyard. So the thing that makes Geminis normal in the graveyard, that gets shut off too. Isn't that funny? Hades is out here negating effects no one should even really care about. The hater energy here is unreal, and that's not even accounting for how dripped out this guy is. Look at the big skull chestplate, the ornate headdress, with optional horn accessories, thanks censorship. He's even got a choice between Baja Blast and Code Red to drink out of his sick goblet. I can see why Supergiant were so keen to make a game for this guy. Now, there are quite a few spell and trap cards to go over that feature the Dark Ruler, but first, we need to do a little bit of housekeeping and talk about some associated monsters. Some you might not have heard of include Opticlops, a level 4 Dark Fiend monster with 1800 attack and 1700 defense. They're notable because they actually list out Hades by name in their flavor text. Never really shows up in any cards with Hades though, which is different from Winged Minion, a level 2 Dark Fiend monster with 700 attack and defense, which you contribute to select a face-up Fiend-type monster on the field and increase the attack and defense of that monster by 700 as long as it remains face-up on the field, which is pretty funky, honestly. Like, it's not good, but buffs like that don't usually last for so long. It's like an uninteractable equip spell, and I do love me some equip spells. We don't have any flavor text to connect these, but between one anime card and a real one we'll talk about later, this is a real connection, and from what we can see, it's kind of a brat. Dark Resonator also shows up on a card, which is weird, so I'm chalking this up to not being the real Hades, but a version being used in a duel. And unless we see Resonator show up in the Duel Monsters Underworld at some point, I'm calling this connection Muko. But the most important monster to mention is Dark Ruler Hades' rival, Dark King of the Abyss, a level 3 Dark Fiend monster with 1200 attack and 800 defense. It's said that this king of the Netherworld once had the power to rule over the dark, until Hades kicked him out for having almost exactly half their stats. Like really, half the level, half the defense, almost half the attack if not for that stupid extra 50. But I guess that's the real Dark Ruler difference. But in defeat, the Dark King found the most powerful weapon of all, perseverance, and would always find something or some way to harass and even dethrone Hades. Yeah, the big guy takes a bit of a tumble into the underworld himself, but they got better. Revived King Hades is a level 6 Dark Zombie Synchro monster with 2450 attack and 0 defense, requiring Plague Spreader Zombie and one or more non-tuner zombie monsters as material. And it functions largely the same as their original form. It negates the effects of effect monsters destroyed by battle with zombie-type monsters that you control. Two notable differences are that this card can be revived from the grave, but I guess being brought back as a zombie will do that to you. And that it only makes zombies negate the effects of effect monsters destroyed by battle, which sounds very similar, almost indistinct from each other, but because it only negates effect monsters' effects, if a Gemini monster is still a normal monster when destroyed by battle, you will not negate its effects in the graveyard, which means you will not be applying the silliest graveyard negate to exist. I'm telling you, coming back as a zombie really took the edge off this guy. He may be undead, but he sure ain't killing it. Alright, now we can start taking a look at those spell cards, starting with everyone's favorite, Dark Ruler No More, a normal spell card that negates the effects of face-up monsters your opponent currently controls until the end of this turn. Also, for the rest of the turn after this card resolves, your opponent takes no damage, and neither player can activate monster effects in response to this card's activation. This card was a menace right out the gate. Released as part of the Gold Sarcophagus trio, this card, alongside Nibiru the Primal Being and Dimension Shifter, was meant to bring an era of peace and prosperity to the game. Powerful tools that going second decks could use to fight back against the wave of build-a-board decks that felt so oppressive at the time. But their legacy as saviors would soon be corrupted. To this day, people are still calling for Dimension Shitter to be put on trial, and Nibiru is still more than capable of ruining someone's day if they aren't quick enough on the monster negate draw. In comparison, Dark Ruler No More actually seems kind of tame. It doesn't actually break the board it's played against. The rest of your cards are going to have to actually do the heavy lifting. It's just that now you've turned off opposing monster effects to help clear the way. And even then, only the monsters they controlled at resolution. In fact, there are a ton of drawbacks that give the opponent a lot of ways to play around this card. The most obvious, of course, is the damage prevention. It's going to be hard to end the game if you can't put your opponent's life points to 0. But its wording opens up the door for some shenanigans. The part that keeps both players from responding to this card with monster effects is meant to push through any that would represent a negate of their own that could shut this card off, and also pins down any quick effects that might give the opponent value before Dark Ruler fully resolves. This means it rewards decks that play interactive spell and trap cards by giving them a way to play around this. And I'm not just talking about playing hard negate counter traps like the Solemns. As long as you can activate any spell or trap card in response to this card, your monster effects become unlocked, at least for the rest of the chain. That's because those monster effects will be activated in response to another card, not Dark Ruler No More. From a historic standpoint, while it hasn't caused as many headaches, this was probably the most successful of the Gold Sark trio at being a strong going second tool without going completely haywire, and continues to be the reference point for a constant theme in Hadess's stories, where he just gets negated over and over and over again to repent for his crimes. But like, did you really have to 1,000 years of death that guy? In public? That's something that should be enjoyed in the privacy of one's own home, not posted for the world to see. I mean, not unless you're paywalling it. Mind Trust is a normal spell card that has you attributing a level 2 or higher monster to add a tuner monster from your graveyard to your hand, whose level is less than or equal to half of the attributed monsters. When considering using this with synchro monsters, it makes a kind of sense. Usually, tuners are going to be less than half the level of that monster, but if you want to get that tuner back with upside, you should probably consider just playing desynchro, which means we want to be attributing other kinds of monsters. And it does kind of blow, especially in ye olden days, to give up a high-level non-tuner to get back a tuner, since you need both for your big flashy monsters. So unless you're running a deck of monsters that like to be attributed, hello Clown Crew, good to see you, you're better off just skipping this for some other recursion. And for the love of Raw, Dark Resonator, get your ass out of this card. If Jack finds out you're working with another king, you're gonna need that once per turn battle destruction protection. The Puppet Magic of Dark Ruler is a normal spell card that selects a Fiend-type monster in your grave. You're removed from play monsters on your side of the field whose total levels equal exactly the level of the selected Fiend-type monster, then special summon the selected monster from your graveyard. That's right, we've got a spell that does graveyard ritual synchro summoning using banishment. This card is just kind of odd, and is part of a giant stack of spaghetti noodles that have languished at the bottom of the wall, having failed to stick after a team of hapless designers threw them to find the next big twist of the game. And granted, this is kinda neat. I could totally see a more refined, modern version of this design space for banishing fiends to bring out more from your graveyard, maybe even having a kind of trigger that happens when those monsters get banished. But like, right now, it's still 2004. They were still calling it removed from play back then. They didn't exactly have a lot of strategies that hinged on Graveyard 2. Make it so we can use warriors, and I might be able to get you something with DD Survivor, but that's it. A Deal with Dark Ruler is a quick play spell card that is always treated as an Archfiend card. You can activate it the turn a level 8 or higher monster under your control was sent to the graveyard, which special summons a Berserk Dragon from your hand or deck. So if you land a particularly big monster and your opponent snipes it, this card floats you into a pretty nasty threat. Heck, it doesn't even have to be taken out by your opponent. It only checks if a level 8 or higher monster was sent from your control to the grave. So if you link it off for something else, you've still met the requirements. Now, how nasty is it? Well, let's take a look at it right now. Berserk Dragon is a level 8 dark zombie monster with 3500 attack and 0 defense that can't be normal summoned or set, and must be special summoned with a deal with Dark Ruler, and can't be special summoned by other ways. This card can attack all monsters your opponent controls once each, and during each of your end phases, this card loses 500 attack. Now, that can turn a lot of people off. It's literally rotting there on your board, but a 3500 multi-attacker that turns into a 3k one next turn is still a monster threatening a ton of damage, and because of how high its level is, if it gets outed, that just gives you another chance to activate another copy of a deal with Dark Ruler to do it all over again. And gotta say, I'm kinda looking forward to trying this out in a domain deck. You see the end phase a lot less often, and there are potentially a lot more monsters to run over. Sounds like a done deal to me. Trading Places is a quick play spell card that, if your life points are higher than your opponent's, switch your life points with your opponent. Yeah, so here's where we see Winged Minion as part of the crew, and yeah, the two certainly have traded places, can't deny that. As for applications, I'm not really sure what to use this in. Like, if the effect didn't have an activation condition, you could just pay out a bunch of life points and then swap with your opponent, so it's like they're paying all those life points, but you do have to be higher, so that doesn't work. Maybe at some point in the future we'll get like an inverse Aeromage deck where you gain a lot of bonuses if you have lower life points than your opponent. But like, who would even cook up a deck like that? I'll tell you who, Winged Minion, and that's why they shouldn't be in charge. Everything is all topsy-turvy with them around. Next thing you know, they're gonna want horns or something, and that will not fly. Well, I mean, it will, but not like in a metaphorical sense. Trading Places sound like it's a TLC show. Like, what are we doing here, devs? What are we doing? Demotion is an equipped spell card that downgrades the level of the equipped monster by 2. Downgrade! We were just saying anything back before problem-solving card text was a thing. Apparently there were other cards using that word, but they've since been eroded. Demotion is the only one to have held on to that phrasing, and given its effect, I think it's going to stay that way for a long time. Not sure what set's going to want to have this as a reprint. When introduced, the only thing Demotion could be used for was very niche things, like equipping it to your own monster to decrease the boost provided by an opposing Amulet of Ambition, I guess. But later on, it could change the levels of your own monsters to grant access to different synchro monsters. Or maybe even hit one of your opponent's monsters to make it difficult for them to hit a certain synchro. But it was very, very unplayable, and remains so to this day. However, this does hold a special place in Hades history, as it is perhaps the beginning of the beef between Hades and Dark King of the Abyss, sparking years, nay decades of animosity. So you could say that its effect is irrelevant. Demotion is a lot more about the emotion. Alright, that does it for the spells. Let's bring on the trap cards. Bark of Dark Ruler is a normal trap card that you can activate if a fiend-type monster you control battles during the damage step. You can pay life points in multiples of 100, then target the opponent's battling monster, and that opponent's monster loses attack and defense equal to the amount of life points you paid until the end of the turn. What's funny is that there's no upper limit to what you can pay here, aside from the implied limit. You can't pay more than what is necessary. So if a monster has 2000 attack, you aren't able to pay more than 2k. Still, that gives you the option to just pay enough to win the battle, or you can keep paying life points to effectively deal more damage. I love effects like this. I just wish it wasn't tied to a normal trap card. This stapled to a continuous trap card would be pretty funny, but telling this to all of you isn't going to do anything. I'm just barking up the wrong tree here. Destruct Potion is a normal trap card that selects a monster you control, destroys it, and you gain life points equal to its attack. So this is cool. It's like Mystic Walk, but for cards that like being destroyed. What's less cool is that you're probably vomiting up blood right now, because you remember this is one of the key components in the Manipulator of Souls FTK, where you blast a huge monster to gain a huge chunk of life points, letting MOS convert it into lethal damage. It's really hard to think of anything else in regards to this card. I mean, it's not the potion's fault, it's Zexal's fault, really, but we still can't help but associate him. That's how deep the trauma runs. Also, is Dark King of the Abyss the potion here? Is revived Hades about to twist its head off like a bottle of pop and chug down the delicious soul juice? Hate Buster is a normal trap card that can be activated when a Fiend-type monster you control is targeted for an attack. Target the opponent's attacking monster and that monster that you control. Destroy both targets, and if you do, inflict damage to your opponent equal to the original attack of the opponent's destroyed monster. So it's like a Sakuretsu armor. No, you still lose the monster here, but the trade-off is the burn damage, which can be pretty substantial depending on who you're up against. And, to be fair, Fiends love being destroyed. Run this in Unchained to get some removal and an enabler, and to help close out the game. But sadly, there's just a big box of battle tricks that are just not viable, and this has first-class seating. It's weak to proactive removal, it can be played around, and let's be real, if you're skimping on your explosives by getting them from the Blast Asmodean, we just aren't taking you seriously. Go bust somewhere else. Order to Smash is a normal trap card that targets a level 2 or lower non-token normal monster that you control. Tribute that monster, and if you do, destroy up to 2 spell and or trap cards your opponent controls. Hell yes, I love turning Ojamas into back row removal. Easy A+. Any card that allows me to grind up Ojamas is a good card. Is there anything else to really talk about here? Yeah, it's bad, but it was made for me specifically. It was made for me to pulverize whatever material makes up Ojama Green's ungodly teeth and liquefy whatever flesh substitute constitutes their frame. Have I made it clear enough that I do not like Ojamas? Next card, please. Reanimation Wave is a normal trap card that you can activate when your opponent's monster declares a direct attack. Select a synchro monster in your graveyard with a level less than or equal to the attacking monsters, and have the battle damage you take from that battle. And at the end of the damage step, special summon the selected synchro monster from the graveyard. This is fine, I guess. Like, it's another card that depends on your opponent attacking you, which is only a small part of their entire turn, and they need to attack with a big enough monster, bigger than any synchro you'd want to bring back, and it only halves the damage, so it could still just kill you. So, it's not good. That being said, I do like the storytelling here. Like, remember how original Hades couldn't be revived from the graveyard? But being a revived Hades implies that that restriction has been undone, replaced with the power of a zombie overlord, and now is bringing back other monsters from the grave? That's kind of cool. Would be nice if they did anything with it, but still cool. Also, there are 2 monsters here that require Plague Spreader Zombie as material. How does that factor into the zombie world lore? I want answers! Reject Reborn is a normal trap card that you can activate when an opponent's monster declares a direct attack. End the battle phase, then you can special summon a tuner and a synchro monster from your graveyard, but they have their effects negated. This is already much better than Reanimation Wave, I think, because at least it doesn't require your opponent to have a monster with a level. Their effects are negated, sure, but the idea is to link climb them up into an even bigger threat later, and because it ends the battle phase, you don't have to worry about other monsters coming in and sideswiping them before you get a chance to use them. Now, granted, it's still not a good card, but, you know, we're moving up the spectrum a bit. And while it's not a good card, it's got a load of fun connections baked in. First off, the Horde of Skull Servants ties things back to that archetype, and even Guardian of the Labyrinth is here? Or perhaps it's a bit of foreshadowing. There is a Link version, Defender of the Labyrinth. Those weren't out at the time of this card's printing, but Defender does have an effect that, if destroyed by an opponent's card, it revives a non-effect monster in your graveyard. That might be what we're seeing from the Labyrinth Guard, using the last of its life energy to send Dark King of the Abyss out of Zombie World, but the king hasn't finished torturing his rival just yet, and has thus opted for a powerful rebirth instead to even the odds. That, or Defender's effect, was negated because it was run over by revived ruler Hades and Dark King had nowhere to go. Both are equally likely. Otherwise, I have no idea why a normal monster from Metal Raiders is showing up here. Only normal monsters from Legend of Blue Eyes White Dragon are allowed here, thank you very much. Skill Prisoner is a normal trap card that targets a card you control, and for that turn, when any monster effect resolves that targeted that card at activation, negate that effect. And during either player's turn, except the turn this card was sent to the grave, you can banish this card from your grave to apply the same effect as the on-field activated version. God, this card is so cool! So, in Yu-Gi-Oh!, if a monster is targeted for an effect, and then gains targeting protection from effects later on in that chain, that will not stop that previous effect from going off, because it was already targeted before it gained protection from that. But Skill Prisoner works in a way that does do that, making it work much more like how Hexproof does in Magic the Gathering. and you get to double dip with it, which is so cool. I wish they would print more cards or effects like this, because the idea of throwing up a shield at the last second is very dramatic, and it gives you a tool like how gaining destruction protection later in a chain would stop a destruction-based effect. I love seeing it in action, as well as confirming the existence of AT fields in the zombie world verse. Very cool crossover. Soul Drain is a continuous trap card that you can activate by paying 1,000 life points, and while on the field, monsters that are banished, as well as monsters in the grave, can't activate their effects. This is where we see Hades's soul being extracted from their corporeal body, which will then be used by Dark King of the Abyss to torture Hades for eternity. We can see this happening in Mind Drain, a continuous trap card that you can activate by paying 1,000 life points, and while it's face up on the field, the effects of monsters in the hand can't be activated. And to round out the trio, we have Skill Drain, a continuous trap card that you can activate by paying 1,000 life points, and while on the field, negate the effects of face-up monsters while they're face-up on the field, but their effects can still be activated. An important note to have here, since the other members of the Drain trio just flat out do not allow you to activate their respective monster effects. It's also a prequel to what happens in Soul Drain, since we can see Hades has a full set of horns, not the cracked left horn that happens when they get revived. Each of these cards, in one way or another, have been a menace to competitive Yu-Gi-Oh!, and outside of the stun players that effortlessly get under your skin, no one likes them. And it's not hard to see why. Anytime any of these three groups of places have notable monster effects, you can slot in the corresponding Drain and just remove interaction entirely. It is true that Skill Drain can be the cornerstone of decks that use monsters with negative effects, my favorite being those ones that you can normal summon despite having a high level for a reduced stat total, only for Skill Drain to set them back to their original stats, making for a neat little build-around mechanic. But the upsides do not counteract the downsides. Soul and Mind Drain have escaped any retribution so far, but Skill Drain is currently limited and is hanging on by a thread. Now, who's gonna tell me why Soul Drain is the only one that has a whole ass dragon to itself? Get me Mind Drain and Skill Drain Dragon, please! Sinister Yorishiro is a continuous trap card that, while face up on the field each turn, a level 5 or higher fiend monster you normal summon can be summoned without a tribute, and if exactly one normal summoned or set level 5 or higher fiend monster and no other cards would be destroyed, you can send this card to the graveyard instead. So I wasn't sure what a Yorishiro was, so the Wikipedia trivia page was my first destination. Turns out they're from the Japanese religion Shinto, and Yorishiros are objects that attract and house spirits. So yeah, I would say the Rogues Gallery here fits that bill. Being able to cheat on tributing can be pretty spicy, especially with the picks on display here. Hades is admittedly a little outdated, but Vanity's Fiend has always been a bother, similarly with Majesty's Fiend. Emissary of Pandemonium is certainly a choice, but these three monsters all have one thing in common. They are high-level fiend monsters that can't be special summoned, either entirely or in certain ways, making them perfect to bring out with Sinister Yorishiro. And the protection effect doesn't hurt either. Consider keeping this on hand if you similarly have a fiend deck with big monsters that would enjoy a free ride out of the hand. And let's also give a big shout out to the artists. They were cooking with Hades on this one. They got the prompt that it had to look sinister and they said, "Hold my goblet." Soul Demolition is a continuous trap card whose effect you can only activate if you have a fiend-type monster on your field. You pay 500 life points to activate the effect, which has both players selecting a monster in their opponent's grave, removing from play the selected cards. This is a fun bit of graveyard hate that's repeatable as long as you have a little chunk of change to toss at it. The downside is that your grave is up for grabs too, so make sure nothing valuable is in there when you go to treat the essence of the departed like a fancy stress ball. And they don't even have to pay for the privilege, freeloaders. But I think the big takeaway is that this gives us the biggest insight into why Dark King of the Abyss's tactics have been so effective. Looking over the cards, it does appear kind of silly. I mean, Hades does have more than double Dark King of the Abysses, and he's scared for what? He's holding a little blue beanie baby? But no, this is Hades's soul, and because of his history of tormenting the after images of the departed, he knows, probably better than most, what kind of power the Dark King now has over him. This playful jabbing could easily turn fatal with just the simplest whim. Hades reveled in the power to demolish souls. Oh, what irony it is that his fate shall now be forever dangling at the end of a string when the tables are now turned. And that's all the hot desk cards. A bit of a shorter trip than the last few, very surprised by this, but who knows? Perhaps the Dark Ruler is biding their time until they can take the top spot once again. I'm sure Hades and Baylor Drock would make a fine team up, don't you? But now, I want to hear what you all have to say. What's your favorite Hades card, and if it came back for a third time, what kind of effects or role would you like it to play in a future build-around? With Bakura having a few zombie and fiend-themed cards, I think Hades might make the perfect bridge and or general for such a deck. Let me know your thoughts down below, and as always, please be sure to like the video if you liked it, subscribe so you don't miss an episode, be sure to click one of my videos in the sidebar to help me show up on your homepage, and share this video with somebody you know who loves Yu-Gi-Oh! It really does a lot to help me out. Today's episode is brought to you by Dragon Shield. Get the sleeves as strong as dragon scales and save 5% on your order by using the coupon code GoldenNova at checkout while helping out the channel. It was also brought to you by my lovely patrons, including this month's illustrious Quasar Commanders, Upstairs Media and the Critic of Innocence, Nebula Navigators, 3rd Dynasty, Adam Zajdel, Ancient Wizard, Andrew Newman, Avi Chali, Battle Axe, Beastsman, Charlie Mercury, Chibi Gohan, Christopher Fuss, Clockswork, Eric, Frankie, Great Big Pillock, Groog, Hairbear, Harry the Ominous Benefactor, Ignavius, Iron Zero, Iskander 711, Japan Man, Carp, Marion James E. Picata, Meme King, Muse Clark, Neon Yaminair, Orozco 09096, Panther J, Pat Poos, Rebel King Lucifer, Red Eyes Jackalow, RJ the Jank Monarch, That One Dumbass and the Wizard Moose, Cosmic Crusaders, Animasta, and Thorak, Anything You Can Say, Blitzwolf, Chaz Ghost, Christopher Fuss, again, Cool Trainer Dark, Da Tenchi 67, Dr. Entity RIP, Drachenwald, Eki Bullock, Eva Padilla, Herbal D, Inblink, J.A. Flair, Julian Marquis, Kale the Dragon, Kryptonian Blurred, Lobomaru 02, Manga Pages, Millennia Asta, Mr. Machina, Natiel Lee Alexander, Not Al Gore, Obsidian, Rhyme Kairos, Rogue Wolf, Seraph SG, Shizuka Nijimura, Simic Toadstool, Sonic 21 Blast, Stepfin Huntsman, The Legendary Raven, The Queen of Time, Tiger X2476, Tristan O'Meara, Zayden, Zaldreka, and Zentha, as well as all the lovely Starlight Explorers you see on screen now. If you'd like to help me in my journey to cover all of Yu-Gi-Oh's archetypes, get my videos early, be a part of these credits and other awesome perks, it would mean the world to me if you would check out the link to my Patreon in the description or consider joining as a YouTube member. And if you'd like to see some other iconic monsters from the game's history, check out this video where I cover the life and times of Gaga Gigo. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.